Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, investment income without mortality credits, part 4 in our series on guaranteed lifetime income in retirement. And we're talking today about investment income without mortality credits. Now, just to be a heads up, I have money in the market. I have mutual funds, I have ETFs, but I don't worry about mutual funds and ETFs as it relates to trying to match up my guaranteed income with my guaranteed domestic spending. I'll get into that in the next segment. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the cost of funds and ETFs so that you can actually measure, is this a good or a bad deal ultimately when you go to use annuities. Now, I believe the 4% rule is dead. To be honest with you, I just don't see bond income, bond interest, and stock dividend actually generating this from most of the portfolios we see in the United States right now. So I tend to think, no, it's not generating enough to use the 4% rule of thumb any longer. The average advisor, when I'm out speaking or I'm talking on the phone or they come in here as our guests, the average advisor now recommends about 3% withdrawal rate, some even at 275. But let's just use 3% right now for the monthly income. And the top performing life annuities right now, and I'm not talking about the payout rate, I'm talking about the internal rate of return to life expectancy is right around 3%. So I'm just trying to match up some basic math and science again to argue my case. So I don't think the 4% rule is online. 3% is probably still a little bit much, but I'm just going to use it for today's discussion. And again, the average top of the line annuity, not the average, but the top of the line annuity, it's going to be right about 3% to life expectancy. Again, not the payout rate, the internal rate of return. How long will your portfolio live? Well, let's just say if you're going to live to 93, 94, where we're talking about the average female who's going to succeed her husband, we're looking at this, I'm just looking at strong gains. So if I had strong gains and I had a great market over a long period of time, almost 30 straight years of great, strong market, I might be able to make it out to that client's average life expectancy. But I also noticed that if I had moderate gains, I start to fall at about age 90. So I might still be short 3 years. And by the way, this is the underpinning argument of why women planning should be completely different than their male counterparts since they seem to live longer. And to manage this area, any gap is almost always going to be a female issue over a male issue. We need to make sure that we're taking care of that gap. Depending upon how the market goes, that gap could be big. In my case in point, moderate loss. If I had a moderate loss, that drops me at age 83, and mother will still be living another decade on the average. So it really makes a difference. And if I have early losses early on, I could have some really portfolio problems of performance or even existence sometime around age 80. So what I'm trying to do is take care of that. I can't use mutual funds or ETFs at our present rate of return and the way the market acts today. I cannot put that against domestic and essential spending, which I have guaranteed obligations. I can't guarantee and to pay my obligations, my monthly obligations, whether they're the discretionary or my actual obligations. I can't pay those with income that comes in irregularly. It has to be predictable. It has to be certain. Fund expenses. Every fund has an expense ratio, and it's actually cited in the actual prospectus. And most people don't know that there's additional costs, and you can find that on any ETF or any mutual fund, and it's called the Statement of Additional Information. It'll not only give you additional information on the fund beyond the prospectus, but it'll also talk about additional costs. I remember in 2015, we had a loser year. You know, most people experience losses. 72% of Americans experience losses in their mutual funds. Now, when we went out and said, hey, what was the statement of additional information? What was the cost for that? We had to sit there and say, wow, not only did we lose money, but we actually had an additional cost we didn't even know we had. So when most people say, I have an expense ratio of maybe 80 basis points, there might be another 100 to 140 basis points on top of that that's not described in the prospectus, but it is cited in the statement of additional information. You need to know that, and you need to look at that because I'm going to argue an issue here in a second that I want you to think about strictly on the basis of math. Cash drag. Most people we have to be liquid. We have to have net asset value at the end of the day. I have to be able to think about people terminating as a mutual fund administrator. Some people could surrender, terminate. They could take partial. I have to be liquid enough. And if I'm liquid and I have money in cash, I'm not invested. And if I'm not invested, I'm paying whatever I'm getting in return, whatever they're crediting to my cash account, which is going to be maybe 0.10 to 0.12. And I still have these expense loads to pay. So I might actually be losing money in my cash positions. I have to look at every mutual fund's different, every ETF's different. You have to look, are you actually experiencing a loss based on your cash holdings inside a mutual fund or an ETF? And then, of course, RIA fees. The average IRA fee in the United States is right around a point. So I'm adding another cost and another hurdle that I have to overcome on whatever mutual fund or ETF that I'm using to generate income to pay guaranteed obligations and discretionary spending in my budget. Then qualified plans. If my money is in qualified plans, I have qualified plan costs. Those costs, depending upon, could be anywhere from 45 basis points and exceed over 1 basis point. You're going to be looking at this and saying, "God, I didn't realize how much expense loads could be involved in this." Again, I have mutual funds and I have ETFs. Those funds are used to take the edge off on inflation, to keep giving me the power of my purchasing power during my retirement. So when I'm looking at that, I like it, but I don't try to use mutual funds and ETFs to match up to my guaranteed budget obligations where I'm going to have essential spending and discretionary spending. And then remember, taxes on non-qualified mutual funds. Shocker, in 2015, when we had losses, as I've described, many clients received a end-of-the-year statement in January, and then that showed their losses, and then about 3 or 4 days later, they actually received a 1099 from the same fund. Most clients don't understand that you could actually have a loss position in a mutual fund and still have to pay taxes on a non-qualified fund like this because there's trading going on throughout the year. So it's really a heads up. Remember, this is all there. That could be right there, could be between 4 and 5% right there on the mutual fund. So I have to at least clear out all these expense loads before I make $1. Keep that in mind. By the way, if I did that, I'd have to add on my 3%. Remember, I'm only making 3 at the annuity, but all my annuity is clean to life expectancy at 3%. So if I had a 3% plus these costs, I have to be making about 7 to 8% clean to get down to 3%. The gross rate exceeds 7% on the things that I talked about, the average. The low beta to pull that kind of a fund that's actually making 7% gross is about 6, 7. That means I could lose principal. And remember, the income of the annuity, the beta risk is 0. The only issue here is the company's ability to pay the premium. So you definitely want to have, or pay your benefit every month, you definitely want to have a good, high quality, high rated company so that you know that whatever you're investing in with that carrier, you're actually going to get those payments for 30 or 40 years. I think you need to split your portfolio and dedicate that portfolio to growth, to take care of inflation, and to move your assets up the food chain into appreciation. But then you need to also segregate strictly dedicated for income. Annuities is the best way to take care of, in my view, discretionary and essential spending in retirement. So I like to partition the difference between growth and income to make sure that I can really manage both on 2 different reasons and 2 different platforms in my thinking. I quote income from income writers off variable and index. I quote single premium immediate annuities and deferred income annuities. And by the way, a little heads up, no matter what annuity I might have a regular fixed annuity, a variable annuity, an index annuity, I'm not triggering the benefits until I go out to Cannex.com, look at the SPIA rates, the single premium immediate annuity rates, or the DIA rates, the deferred income annuity rates. I want to look at those first and see if my regular annuity is better than some of these rates. And you'll be surprised that even on an index, a good performing index, about 1/3 of the time, the index will be the way to go with an income rider. But 2/3 of the time, the SPIA rates or DIA rates, again, single premium immediate annuity or deferred income annuity, actually beat it. And longer retirements, I'm saying you need to start thinking about 30 to 40 years on average. And remember, there's a cost to having living riders. You want to have a cost of living. You want to be able to put that on. I think you may want to look at COLAs as part of your defense against inflation for your essential and discretionary spending. Don't forget to watch our next segment on the Mortality Revolution, Extending Planning Horizons, part 5 in our series on guaranteed lifetime income in retirement. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.